What's the weirdest thing a medical professional has casually said to you? Story 1. After destroying my knee riding BMX at 17, the emergency surgeon said, "Wow, really messed that up." 10 years later and another serious knee injury from riding, I saw the same surgeon. He did a great job on the first one. First words out of his mouth were, "I remember you. Effed up the other one, huh?" Story 2 was living in a foreign country and had a cold, flu-type illness. Went to the doc and he came in, eating a bowl of cereal. Already weird. Checks some things and says, "Do you know what AIDS is?" I'm in complete shock and say, "Yes, I do." He follows up with, "It's a virus and there is no cure." Goes on to explain why there is no cure, all while I'm seeing my life over as I know it. Finally ends with, "But you don't have that virus. You have a different one. Much more common and treatable, but I wanted you to understand why an antibiotic wouldn't work." Still in shock, I'm like, "So I don't have AIDS then, right?" He goes, "No," and walks out. What a roller coaster. Story 3. My previous OBGYN came through my line at my old job. For some reason, I blanked on who he was. Like I knew him, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember how. He saw I was struggling and said, "Don't remember me? I'll give you a hint. Last time I saw you, you were in my office with your ankles in the air." Loudly, in front of a line of little old ladies fresh from church, wanting to buy flowers from the garden center. He was an amazing doc and figured out what was wrong with me when no other doc could. But in that moment, the embarrassment could have killed me. Story 4. When I was 12, I had a dentist say, "Hold on, I think I might be counting wrong. You shouldn't have those yet." Okay, never mind, those are definitely your wisdom teeth. Your mouth is just huge, I guess. They said it was the youngest they've ever seen anyone get their wisdom teeth. They called in every dentist in the building to come look at my mouth. Story 5. When my girlfriend was in the ICU, one of the nurses sorta shrugged and said dismissively, "She's gonna die anyhow." She should have. Her kidneys had shut completely down and she was so swollen that her tongue wouldn't fit in her mouth. We were making the decision whether to continue life support or not. She didn't die. A month and a half later, she walked out of the hospital and into my car for the ride home. Story 6. I live in Ireland. The surgeon who replaced my hip is also a farmer. The day before I was due to be discharged, he came in on his rounds. He said, "I may or may not see you tomorrow. It depends on the dog." So I said, "Okay, what's up with the dog?" He told me the dog broke his leg and was having it set tomorrow, but he wasn't sure what time, so I said, "Sure, bring in the dog and I'll mind him." This is rural Ireland, bear in mind, and I was in the convalescent area of the hospital by then. And shortly after breakfast, he arrived in with the dog, lovely border collie with his leg in plaster. He stayed with me watching TV till the doc was finished replacing another hip and was ready to discharge me, and we could all go home. It could only happen in Ireland. Story 7. I told an OBGYN during an exam that my husband and I had just started trying to get pregnant, and she said, "Are you tracking your cycle or just fucking all the time?" Hearing that come out of a small elderly black woman was freaking hilarious. She was close to retirement and had zero filter, miss her. Story 8. I was 18 at the time and went to the family doctor that brought me into the world. The reason was I was having great pain urinating and was leaking a pus-like substance. After getting a shot, I went to his office. I sat down and he lit a Winston, rocked back in his chair whilst taking a big drag and said, "I am going to talk to you like a Dutch uncle. If you do not know if it is clean, keep your goddamn zipper zipped up." Story 9. Snapped both of my Achilles while finishing off a set of heavy leg presses with calf extensions. I didn't close it all of the way and the sled crashed down on me, pinning my legs next to my head. Yes, I was dumb not to use the safety pins. They weren't there. They constantly disappeared to other machines. So I was lazy for not using them and paid the price. The doctor looked at my scans and said, "These are mirror images of each other. You must have good form." Story 10. A nurse of some kind took my blood pressure. He said what the numbers were. I asked, "Is that good?" He said, "I'm not qualified to give you a professional opinion on the matter. You should ask your doctor." I asked, "But like unprofessionally, is that good?" He said, "Unprofessionally? Well, in my purely personal opinion that I am sharing with you as an individual and not in any medical or official capacity whatsoever, you should buy stronger deodorant." Story 11. I go to urgent care because I have an earache and may have an ear infection. The nurse asks if I'm on any medication and I tell her about my IUD. She says, "I could never have an IUD or even take birth control. You know, since that's murder and all. But hey, do whatever makes you happy." I did report her, and she did get in trouble. Story 12. I live in an area where many people collect and search hard for specific bourbons and whiskeys. My psychiatrist found out that I work at a liquor store and asked me about the whiskeys my store has in stock for a solid 10 minutes. My appointments are scheduled to be 15 to 20 minutes long. Every single appointment. I'm just trying to get my mood stabilizer refilled. Story 13. Was on a 72-hour hold following an attempt on my life on the anniversary of a traumatic event, and had a nurse ask if she could pray for me. I'm not religious, but I thought it was nice, and it was like 2 a.m. and I was tired, so I said sure. She proceeded to pray out loud for like 30 minutes, asking Jesus to forgive me for the huge sin I had committed. Not the direction I thought she'd go, but just said a very awkward thank you after and went back to sleep. Story 14. My gynecologist, while trying to remove my IUD when the strings weren't visible and fishing through my cervix with local anesthesia, thank God. Come here, kitty kitty. In all honesty, I think he spaced out and was very concentrated to avoid unnecessary pain. Uterus wasn't happy with the invasion. And he most definitely has cats, and the words just came out. He bursted out laughing with embarrassment and said sorry more than I could care to count. Honestly, I thought it was hilarious. I've been seeing him for a long time for many IUDs, and he's a gem. Story 15. I was getting my blood drawn for a mono test back around 2006. The older lady nurse asked me what sort of music I liked. I figured she was making small talk to get my mind off the needle, so I rattled off a few bands I'd been listening to. One of them happens to be Postal Service. She says, "Oh, I know that one." I reply, "Yeah, it's the same lead singer as Death Cab for Cutie." She says, "I know, he's my son." Story 16. I had severe pelvic pain that got worse over time after IUD. Had it for just over a year, went back to the doctor insisting something was wrong. She insisted there was no way my pain was caused by the IUD, and that I just needed pelvic floor therapy, or cognitive therapy and antidepressants. I was furious. Saw another doctor who said he could promise me my pain was from the IUD, based on 2 ultrasounds done by the old doctor. He pulled out the IUD, and by the time I had walked back out to my truck, my pain was gone. Story 17. I wasn't about 18 when I first had a pilonidal cyst at the base of my spine. Was excruciating. I couldn't walk, couldn't sit. I was in pain all the time. Go to the doctor. They lance and drain the cyst, put in some gauze, and tell me it is going to continue to drain and I need to go see a specialist in a couple days. First day, I felt so much better. Pressure is gone and I can move normally again. Second day, some pain is back and I am getting concerned again. Third day, everything is worse than before, and I head into the specialist and tell him so. So there I am, bent over this table with my shorts around my ankles when I hear this doctor exclaim, "Holy shit!" So I naturally assume I am going to lose my whole ass, and everything is coming to an end for me. He follows up with, "Did they use an entire fucking roll of gauze?" As he starts to look like a magician pulling a never-ending line of handkerchiefs out of my ass. Felt infinitely better after that, but for a moment there I thought the worst. Story 18. On the first visit, he told me he was living in a motel for this temporary job. And the reason the job was temporary was that he knew he was probably going to go to jail. So right after that visit, I rented a house to him. It was 18 months while the case slowly went through the system, and he was still my doctor. He ended up with 5 years in prison. And the doctor who hired him also ended up going to jail for 18 months. He was guilty of mainly running a pain clinic, and the DA found 11 out of 400 patients were drug-seeking, and he had not done the correct follow-up. He didn't do the drug test to prove they were taking the pills instead of selling them. Also a workman's comp fraud due to incomplete follow-up, and he just signed off on it. I found some of the paperwork in the 4 tons of trash he left in my house, and the prosecution had another doctor report showing these 11 cases where follow-up was not done. By the way, this doctor was on one of the teams first into NYC Ground Zero, and he spent the first 11 days there. He also trained for the state underwater rescue team. No consideration given. The state busted an addict who made a deal to turn him in for being a pill mill. The other doctor billed Medicaid as if he was doing the visit himself, when he actually had a nurse practitioner doing the office visit. He also pre-signed an opiates script for the nurse practitioner to give out to patients when he was not even in the country. So fraud, opiate dispensing in the wrong way, and for violating a prior order that he had to be on site to supervise the nurse practitioner. Story 19. Well, if you want to lose weight, you should cut down to 800 calories a day and work out 30 minutes 5 times a week. I was breastfeeding, and this jerk tried to give me an even bigger eating disorder than the one I was teetering on the brink of. You sure you want to be put under to remove the lipoma? It will take longer to put you under than to get it out. Okay, you probably would have passed out anyway. People usually do when we cut them so close to their vital organs. He did a good job, but I regret going back to him for another surgery because it didn't go smoothly the second time around. When I burn this wart off, it's going to smell like hot dogs. He was right. I was 16 and asked my mom if we could get an extra long chili cheese coney when we were done. She was totally disgusted, but I got one. Story 20. With one leg on his chair, Captain Morgan style, in the middle of a rather lengthy conversation and as an aside, so they're probably going to run a wire up into your heart and give it a little shock to put an extra beat in there. If it give you a lethal arrhythmia, we'll know something's actually wrong, but it should just stabilize on its own. I stopped him and asked, "Did you just say you were going to try and give me a heart attack and if I don't die, I'm fine?" He said, yes, I guess, but that's why we are doing it in the hospital.